So what about Indian society? So our society is so diverse.
When we look at the Indian society in terms of the caste system, we follow a very hierarchical system of caste.
See, internet was seen as an equalizer. It kind of gave voice to the voiceless and decentralized information. Okay, so what is the relationship between social progress and democracy? So what about the United States of America, USA? So how do you analyze this situation? We consider their progress as kind of benchmark. Can you make a comparison between the powers of the Indian Prime Minister and American President?
So the Indian Prime Minister and the American President both are elected by the people, but
organized states to bring together lots of states together. The Prime Minister should have been given more executive powers.
Sir, because of various factors, for example, there was a lot of communal violence which was happening. The issue of Kashmir was still unsettled.
So what is your view on one nation, one election?
In terms of one nation, one election, it is something that I agree.
So what do you think is going to be the implication of artificial intelligence on society in general in coming years?
So artificial intelligence is something which is driving the economy at the present. However, its implication on society, it's more deep-rooted and deep entrenched than we can imagine. So firstly, what comes to my mind is its impact on the society in terms of the moral blind spots that exist in the society is exacerbated by the presence of AI. So mostly in social media, we see the prevalence of deepfakes and presence of a lot of other infringement on the personality rights, which is generated by the AI. And this has an implication on women. And women, understanding of women is already very in terms of they are extremely vulnerable in the society, and AI sort of deepens this vulnerability of women. And the second impact of it is felt on the children. The third impact of it is felt on the older generation of the society. The reason being that nowadays AI is also fueling a lot of digital arrests, and this is leading to a lot of problems among the older generation who are not well equipped with dealing with a lot of equipments. So that is a problem that is happening. So in the society, these three sections are the most vulnerable when it comes to AI.
Okay. So what about Indian society? So our society is so diverse. There are so many things happening, and there are so many things in our society. So especially like caste system and various forms of discrimination, various inequalities. With respect to these, what could be the implication of AI?
When we look at the Indian society in terms of the caste system, we follow a very hierarchical system of caste. And when we talk about the artificial intelligence, it is used in, I would say, in a very propagandist manner. For example, there was a incident in which there was an upper caste dominated community which was using a lower caste as an AI generated image to show that they are being how they are subjugated and how they have to clean the feet of the the upper caste, and then they have to drink the water. And this caused a widespread uproar, and later police arrested them. But then this particular instance led to an exposition of how deep rooted our caste system is. And at the same time, the second implication of it was in society in general, there was a lot of chaos. So there was a lot of public order. In public order disturbance, there was disturbance in terms of how the lower caste are again fighting for their rights and the upper caste are subjugating them. So this was one incident that comes to my mind. And so secondly, also when we look at the situation of Dalit women, they are constantly subjugated to a lot of violence and repression by the upper caste. And so there are videos circulating in which they are beaten brutally in some forested region of Odisha, and this also goes viral. And AI chatbots are sorry, they are the ones responsible for their wide circulation. So there is no restraint absolutely when it comes to these factors.
See, internet was seen as an equalizer because it kind of gave voice to the voiceless and decentralized information. So what about artificial intelligence? So in from that perspective, uh, as a tool of empowerment, so in what way it can empower?
So there are two ways in which I think it can empower. The first is in terms of spread of education, because artificial intelligence is very much a tool which can be used to bridge the digital divide that exists, because we have a lot of rural areas and people are not able to access education. So artificial intelligence can very well be used to in a very creative fashion. It can be used to instill some very tough concepts of science and technology among children who really want to pursue STEM courses, especially women, because we have a very less representation of women in the STEM in India. And so, second way in which AI can be used as an equalizer is by way of the awareness in terms of the government programs, government schemes which exist, because that sort of instills public trust among the people that government is doing so much for them, and they have to, in case of any sort of grievance that arise, all they have to do is approach a grievance redressal system, which is very much fueled by the AI these days, and then sort of address their grievances.
Okay, so what is the relationship between social progress and democracy?
So social progress deepens democracy. And whenever there is a social progress, democracy, which is the government of the people, by the people, and for the people become more accustomed to understanding how the government is functioning and what role they have to play in order to strengthen democracy. Because if people have lesser idea about how the country is working, in that case, there are chances that the government will altogether it will become a dictatorship, a dictatorial, or an autocratic form of government, which is happening in other countries of the world. For example, Pakistan has seen this because of great illiteracy. We see that people have no idea. There are multiple factors, a deep state which is working in all these. So there is absence of democracy there. So that is one thing. It deepens democracy that way.
Okay, so what about the United States of America, USA? So how do you analyze the situation? We consider their progress as kind of benchmark. Okay,
Yes.
uh, lots of social progress, but again, with respect to democracy, there have been various concerns regarding how it is deteriorating.
Yes, sir. So the deterioration happened after the Trump administration started taking over it, and that was primarily because USA was grappling with some of the issues of its own. For example, it was going through an economic turmoil, and it bought into the idea of "Make America Great Again" of Donald Trump. And when Trump asserted this particular idea on USA, the implications of it started showing at a much later stage. For example, as of now, USA is having some sort of tariff war with China, and on the other hand, it is not able to contain its own diverse population. They are protesting every day for their human rights, like the Black Lives Matter. So these things have started creeping up as a consequence of the American thought process that Trump is going to solve their issues. However, the democratic fashion in which they expected them to solve the issue did not really happen. They started taking over various institutions of the government in their own way, and they started taking it in a more dictatorial fashion, which is what we are looking at right now. There is absence of consultation, there is absence of any global stakeholder meeting happening in the US, and they are gradually shrinking into lesser important power than they were before.
Can you make a comparison between the powers of the Indian Prime Minister and American President?
Yes, sir. So the Indian Prime Minister and the American President both are elected by the people, but at the same time, the Prime Minister is very much accountable to the Parliament, and whatever speeches and whatever bills is introduced by the government, which is led by the Prime Minister, has to pass through the Lok Sabha and then the Rajya Sabha, and then it is assented to by the President. On the other hand, there is a lot of executive power which happens in the United States. So the Trump administration at present, if it wants to pass a particular bill, there is no need to go through so many procedures that Indian government does, and it can automatically it can introduce a bill, and it is implemented the next day. So this is one primary difference that is there between the two powers.
No, no. Why did the American, the forefathers and the ones who created their constitution, why did they give so much executive power to the president?
So that, in essence, is because of the different type of federalism that America is as opposed to India. So in India, we have they had a holding together federalism. We are a coming together. They were a coming together. We are a holding together. So in the United States, the states, the federal states, they decided to come together and submit their sort of sovereignty to the center, and then they became United States, and which is why there is a greater power which exists in the executive, as opposed to India, which was going through a post-independence dilemma of which state should be a part of India and which not, and automatically there was a greater thrust on bringing the states together, and we have a more sort of a systematic way of devolving power than they have.
But don't you think that was the dilemma we were facing to, organize states to bring together lots of states together? The prime minister should have been given more executive powers.
Sir, because of various factors, for example, there was a lot of communal violence which was happening. The issue of Kashmir was still unsettled at that point. And then apart from that, there was the entire Northeast region, which was in which China wanted to claim its sovereignty over. These situations sort of made it very difficult for a very direct imposition of power, which is why we sort of opted for a more flexible route. In fact, when Sardar Patel wanted to bring Kashmir within its fold, Nehru pointed out that this is not something that we can do right now because of the gravity of the situation. It's very sensitive, so we cannot. So this was one of the things which was happening.
So, what is your view on one nation, one election?
In terms of one nation, one election,
Yeah.
it is something that I agree in terms of the amount of fatigue that people go through when they are selecting for the polls in terms of the state election, in terms of the national election. So there are polls happening all around the year. So I think in terms of that, it is better that we have one nation, one election. So that sort of reduces the expenditure also, and that also reduces the fatigue that every voter goes through because of the constant election. However, what I feel is that there should also be a clear demarcation of the ideology. So the states, those political parties who are contesting for the state elections, they should be given a clear, in order to maintain democracy, they should be given clarity in terms of how they want to continue with their speeches and their own canvassing and all those methods, so that there is no overlap, and it does not create confusion in the minds of voters that it is only the central party that we are looking at, or it is only that particular state party which is coming out as a dominant party. That confusion should not happen, is what I feel. There should be something in place to restrict that.
Hmm. But again, we have seen some of the regional parties and opposition parties making the allegation that the move will be unconstitutional, anti-federal.
Uh, so that has primarily to do with the fact that since the central government is saying that this particular act does not need to go through the process of amendment, in which one half of the ratification of the state legislature is required, because we are not amending any of the state subjects. And that is something which is bothering the state parties also. And in that case, it is actually sort of harming the federal structure of the country. So that is something that we need to look at, that they are pointing out.
Okay. So, can you give me 3 points or 3 reasons why special intensive revision that has been undertaken by the Election Commission makes sense?
So, from what I believe, and for me, why it makes sense is, first of all, I feel that,
First of all, do you believe does it make sense, SIR?
sir, I do believe that it makes sense.
So
Uh,
give me 3 reasons. Yes.
So the reason being that there are a lot of infiltrators in the country who are staying in India, but they do not have any sort of they do not have any I would say citizenship or any proof of the fact that they are staying in India. So we have a lot of Bangladeshi infiltrants who are working here, maybe as a domestic help or something, and they claim that they're Indian nationals, but they're not. And then they go ahead and then they start voting in the election. So there is something that needs to be done to curb that out, to filter that out. And secondly, why I feel that the special intensive revision is required is because over a period of time, there is a demographic change which happens, and SIR takes account of that. And it takes into consideration someone who has died, someone who is already there. And thirdly, it is important to weed out, let's say, a duplicity of names or something which happens generally in a lot of state elections. In Bihar, it does happen. It did happen. So I think SIR really helped with that. So these are the three things that I think.
Okay. So if it had good intentions, then why did it give rise to lots of controversy?
Sir, initially there was a controversy because the general people, they were affected by the fact that they have to bring in a lot of documents. They have to show them in order to prove that they are not deceased, they are alive, they are descendants of the fathers who have registered. These were the issues which were persisting at a larger scale. But when Supreme Court order had said that these things should be taken into consideration before you are imposing rules, I think it sort of mellowed down a lot because when I was following through the Bihar elections, this situation was in the beginning, but later there were officials who were getting involved. They were making sure that people are getting access to all the information that they need, and slowly the SIR was prepared and it was fine later on.
Okay. So even now, the major concern, the debate is about should the onus be on the citizen to prove, to supply, to provide the documents and to prove that they are the residents. Uh, but the argument is that it should be on the state to do the, not on the citizen.
Sir, it is, I think, the fact that at this point everything is digitized, but whenever the last elections took place, the digitization process might not have been complete. So I think it is not wrong to call them to verify their documents. But I do understand that it is a hassle for the common person to bring all those things. So I think there should be a middle part to it. For example, if someone has their documents registered and digitized, and from the DigiLocker itself they can take the documents, that will be much better. So instead of calling every one person in person.
Okay. So what is the significance of one man, one vote, one value?
So one man, one vote, and one value is something that I feel it has a lot to do with democracy and election process in general. Because when we look at how people in India, especially in a country where people are not that literate, when they vote, then they have to make a more informed choice as to who they're voting for, who they're not voting for. And when one person votes, then that particular vote has a value in terms of the democracy in general. For example, if someone votes for even none of the above, that also shows that he is making an informed choice.
Yeah, yeah. So you are in the middle of answering that question. I think you answered, I think, the total.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the next question I would like to ask, in the preamble, the word fraternity, right? So
Yes.
what is the significance of that word? Socio-political wise.
Yes. So fraternity is basically brotherhood, also oneness in terms of India as a country and as the people as a community in terms of being Indian as in general. So when
Hmm.
we talk about the socio-political aspect of it in terms of society, what it translates to is absence of any man-made hierarchies which exist in the society. So there should be an addressal of the social issues and not viewing it from the lens of, let's say, the caste perspective or gender perspective, but as a human perspective and as a perspective that we are all citizens of India and how we can address this together. So that's one thing. And when it comes to the political aspect of it, again, it is dealing with the issues that people are facing in day-to-day lives, and not just in terms of, let's say, some political parties highlighting something and the other political parties highlighting something. If they're highlighting it, then we need to come together and consider it as an issue of everyone in general and not just one particular caste or one particular creed. So that is in terms of the socio-political aspect of what fraternity means.
Okay. So in terms of we have social mobility, right?
Yes.
What do you understand by social mobility?
So social mobility is that at present there is absolute freedom in terms of one is not restricted by their caste or their own uh, societal constraints. If they want to, let's say, they want to seek a job, then they won't be questioned in terms of the fact that they belong to a certain caste or certain section of society. So there is a mobility, and there is also the fact that let's say there is an upper caste and then there's a lower caste, and all these things which existed in the villages in the earlier age, it does exist at present also. But in the urban areas, we see that this particular mobility has become more flexible. It's mobile. Let's say people who want to follow a practice of some upper caste, they can do it. And so does maybe an upper caste wants to follow a practice of lower caste, they can do it, and they won't be questioned and judged by society. This is what I understand by social mobilities.
Okay. So with respect to social mobility, in the present situation, present context, which one is the major facilitator of social mobility? Technology or the government?
Uh, s- Sir, I think both of them, they are the facilitators in one way or the other. So if we look at government, then they are the ones responsible for bringing in an awareness of the fact that this is not really a hindrance, and secondly, introducing various schemes which target those sections of the society which want to uplift themselves. So this is one. And secondly, when we look at technology, then technology bridges the gap between the two sections, maybe one which is more backward, by introducing them to the concepts of education, introducing them to the idea of emancipation, especially of the women, the lower castes, the tribes, all these. So I think both of them are facilitators, sir.
Okay. So when Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was studying in the Columbia University, so his teacher was John Dewey, right? So in what way he influenced Ambedkar's philosophy or ideas?
So though I have read about Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, but I'm not really familiar how he was influenced by this. So, sir, I'm not aware of this.
So are you aware of John Dewey? So he was famous philosopher then.
No, sir, I have. Sorry, sir, I haven't heard of it.
Okay. So what about Ambedkar's view on democracy? How did he see democracy?
Sir, I'm aware of the fact that when we were opting for it, he was certain that this is not going to last. He had said this in a lot of interviews, that it is existing, but on paper. The fact that India is yet to become literate enough to understand how we are going to function. So he felt that it's a failed exercise. So this is what I am aware of. This is what he had said.
Okay. So there is a famous quote by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar on the Constitution.
Uh, so sorry, sir, I'm not aware of this, sir.
Okay. So he said the Constitution as good as the people we elect to the legislatures. So evil people will eventually destroy even the best constitution in the world. Do you agree with that?
So I do agree with it to a certain extent. The reason being that I feel that when people generally go for elections, they are wise to understand the implications of who they are choosing. But it is very much possible that they are not wise enough. For example, when we see in the case of the US, they do not understand the implication of, let's say, electing Trump as a president. And similarly, in India also, there are a lot of situations in which we tend to elect a leader. Uh, uh, I would like to give an example of in my state of Bihar itself, we did elect a particular leader for a very long time, which who did create a lot of problems for the state. So I think that does happen to a certain extent. But once people realize the fact that this is not working for us, then I think they will take a wiser decision in the end. This is what I feel.
Okay. Okay, very basic question. How do you define law? LAW.
So basically, law is a structure in accordance with which the governance takes place, in which the administration takes place, and in which all the organs of the government basically they function. So it is a structure in and structure which is coupled with logic. This is what I feel law is.
Okay, what is the purpose of this structure or system you're talking about?
It is to protect the individual rights, sir, and human rights, so that state does not end up encroaching on them. And at the same time, the state has been given a positive obligation to kind of fulfill the rights that are guaranteed or enshrined in the constitution. So both of it, that is the negative as well as the positive implication of it, it exists because of law in general. So this is what I feel it is.
Okay. So what about artificial intelligence and law in general with respect to maybe drafting, framing of law, and then deciding on the validity of the law through the courts. So how all these things are going to be impacted by artificial intelligence?
So artificial intelligence in this situation can be both a boon and a bane. So I would say that when we are doing some research into framing of the laws, we tend to do certain empirical studies, and we tend to do some surveys with regards to what the socioeconomic condition of the area is. So when we are doing that, AI can really help as a tool. But I think it's a bane when we start. asking AI to write the laws or draft the laws, because in that case, AI might have some inherent biases that has been proved in the past also. So that can be a problem, a challenge, because then later when loopholes they arise in the law itself, then artificial intelligence will be the one to blame. So I think it should be used judiciously.
Okay, thank you. Hmm?
Thank you.
Okay. So is this your first one-on-one mock?
Yes.
Okay. So how do you judge your performance today?
Sir, I think it was average.
Hmm. Okay. So okay, okay, that is fine. But what about the nature of your answers and how did you handle questions today?
Um, Sir, I don't really have an opinion on this. So whatever
Okay.
you say.
Yeah, yeah, right. Okay. Definitely, in terms of personality, like confidence, articulation, that is all top notch, excellent.
Yes.
Um, what I felt is that mm, like you want to answer all the questions, like there is bit of sense of urgency, you know. So I think little pause and
Mhm.
organizing, prioritizing your points
Yeah.
and articulating, I think will be more make it more conversational. So
Yes.
it is like it's question and answer session type. There is a question and your answer.
Yeah.
So in your answer, that conversational quality is missing, right?
Okay.
So I think that is something you should try to. It is more like debating type, right? So it should be more conversational. So when you say more conversational, sometimes some of our ideas will not be conclusive, and you will be taking into confidence the board also. So as you must be aware of, so like as you know, something like this, and then some use of some transition words, linkages, however, also something like this. So that I think needs to be there, and so it is good that you accepted that you didn't know. So that is the honesty you have to display. uh, Wherever, even if it is a open-ended question or factual question. Sometimes, though it is a open-ended question where you can think and answer, suddenly you may not get the right thought, right idea. So I think better to accept, you need some more time to organize and then go about it rather than just saying. And here, like you accepted that you didn't know, that is good. But I think you should study about it. So that's very important. Because there are no specific keywords in your DAP, like you have accomplished so many things, so that gives an image that you are highly competent, and you create lots of expectations, right? But there are no keywords for us to start somewhere. Let us say democracy, for example, or
Mm.
arbitration or something like that. So these are all, like, you have done lots of research and seminars, debating and everything. um, So that is why I just started randomly with, yeah, it's something. And then I wanted to revolve around law, society, democracy, and all these things. And Bihar indirectly, SIR issue and all, right? So something, your interview might go in this direction. And they might start with a very broad issue generally. And then from there, they might want to arrive at, things related to Bihar, issues related to Bihar, issues related to law, judiciary,
Mm.
right? Yeah, so you need to be ready for that, because one can see the context here. May not be, the keywords may not be there. Columbia University creates a context for me to start asking about Ambedkar and something else.
All right. All right.
Mm.
Yes.
And also some questions, for example, uh, like Indian Prime Minister and the US President. Definitely you will know the answer, but sometimes it may happen that you know the answer, but you may not be sure sometimes with one or two
Yeah.
points.
Yeah.
It's better to communicate that way. Whichever question, where you're not sure. Yeah, that's what I meant, conversational, sir. I'm not sure, sir, but okay, something like this. Otherwise, good. I don't see any negatives per se, but it depends what kind of question you get, and So did you notice any mistake you did? Uh,
Oh, yes, sir.
what
So,
do you
like,
think you corrected?
when I was concluding a point, then I think I became more informal in the sense that I said, so this is why I think it is, or maybe like that. I think that was one thing that I should work on. And so, secondly, I feel that I did not flesh out the federalism aspect very nicely. So, the holding together, coming together, it got mixed up in my head. But I
Mm.
continued with the thing that I was saying.
That is where I think you need to pause and
To pause.
communicate what is going on in your mind. Right.
Right.
That honesty is very important.
Yeah. Yeah.
You should not just go. I mean, seen as taken for granted and wasting their time, something like that, dishonest. So it's better to pause and then show if you're struggling, you have to show that you're struggling. So that nature should be there in the interview. Okay, all the best. So if you
Thank
would
you.
like
So,
to
so
have one more
anything.
mock, which you can have later if you want.
All right. So I can have one more mock with you then,
Yeah, you can take my number. You can directly communicate with me also, with our team also. So based on your date, like if it is early,
based on the
if
date.
you want to schedule early, you can do that. 99011
990
11
11
59
59
780.
780.
Okay, Vinay
Yes.
Kumar. Okay. Okay.
Yes, sir. So just one last query that I had. So when I'm preparing for the DAF thing right now, as I'm doing my research, so the fact that there is no apps like a keyword in the sense nothing that sort of catches the eye of the person taking the interview. So I had sort of instinctively understood this, and I focused more on the current affairs thing. So I started reading the newspaper, and I have made some notes from the newspaper itself, and I'm also taking like cutouts of those articles that I find interesting for that matter. So I'm doing that, and that is actually helping me with some live examples that I was able to give. So that is one thing that I'm finding it to be useful. So I should, sir, continue with it, and or
Yeah,
should.
so that is one possibility. That's what I said. Some context, how it is indirectly or directly related to whatever you've written.
Mhm.
Secondly, they might directly ask, okay, you have got second prize in GNLU essay competition. What was the topic?
Okay.
So that I'm sure you are preparing that way also. You will,
Yes.
in case they ask about the topic, which topic it was. Similarly, you mentioned researcher, legal researcher at GFE Columbia University. So, what did you research upon? What was the research topic or something?
Mm.
So, what was it?
So it was on freedom of speech and expression. So GFE is global freedom of expression. So
Okay, okay.
I'm preparing on that. And so the GNLU one is on marital rape. So that was one thing that
Why
I.
didn't you mention it?
Uh, so where should I mention this?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think.
there is a space constraint, but
Oh yeah, sir.
Mhm.
That is one thing. And sir, for the other things like the I am Ahmedabad one, and the other thing like Martin and Stanley, which is 2020,
Mhm.
all these are on competition law itself. So
Yeah,
if
yeah,
I read competition law, it is going to cover everything.
correct.
That's one, and the other one is on women. So once I do that, everything will be covered. So these are the two things that I've done. And if
Okay.
they ask me in particular about my visiting editor thing, then I was part of the proofreading team, so I have proofreading guidelines with me and all, so I can explain them that. So these are the three things. It's mentioned a lot, but it's actually the three areas that I need to focus on.
So, are you in touch with any previous UPSC toppers with law optional or?
So the law optional people won't reply, reply. So for some reason, they are all very closeted individuals. So yeah, so that is a problem.
I'll give you one number. He was All India rank 5.
Okay.
He was from National Law School of India University, Bangalore. 998. His name is Jaydev.
Jaidev sir, yes, yes, of course. I have read so
I've
much about
spoken
it.
to him.
I haven't spoken to him directly, but
I'll,
I
I'll I'll put him a word.
follow.
He was our classroom student here. I
All
guided
right.
him actually. So Jaydev, 99861
99861
28984.
248
No, no, 28984.
28984.
Yeah,
So
double
I'll
nine six one
repeat it
two
9
eight
nine eight
four.
six one 28984.
Yeah, yeah, Jaydev. So I will also message him. You just forward me your DAF on my WhatsApp. I will
I'll do that.
forward this to him.
Yeah,
And your number to him also. I'll just ask him to talk to you. He's in Rajasthan currently.
Rajasthan can be.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Hmm.
Yes,
He got 206 in interview, so I think he can help you.
yes, yes. Okay.
All the best.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.